Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video, we're going to be taking a look at some posts that the Final Fantasy XIV team has been making on the Lodestone. These posts largely deal with RMT and methods of counteracting RMT activities, but they have some implications for the casual player as well. So I figure they're worth going over, explain what these things actually mean, and at least posit an idea of why these things are actually happening. So the first one I noticed was last night, at least as of the recording of this video. Strengthening enforcement against real money trading or RMT activity. We'd like to share an update on efforts we are making to strengthen our enforcement against real money trading activity. As detailed in our weekly actions taken against in-game RMT and other illicit activities announcements, we have always taken a strong stance against RMT activity. Yeah, that normally gets rid of advertisers, sometimes in the thousands, but it often doesn't have much of an effect on the actual characters that do the selling of the gil. I think the last one had 70 characters that were banned that were actually dealing in the gil selling and the art of the trading it. Whereas the other like 1,300 or so were advertisers, you know, and they get spammed in city states and stuff like that. And I think they had a few botting bans in there as well. But they've always posted in-depth activity and what exactly they are doing and how effective they have been in a given period of time. So if you didn't know that, you can find that on the Lodestone. I think it's like once a month or something they post it, something in that regard. However, given that we continue to observe a certain level of RMT activity in the game each week, we will be increasing staffing, upgrading our tools, and adding new procedures to further strengthen our enforcement and provide our community with a safe and secure gaming experience. We're going to come back to that last sentence a little bit later, because that last one is very, very important as to what is going on across all of these posts. The following is an explanation regarding how RMT activity negatively impacts the game and promotes fraudulent activity. So if you're someone who's ever seen a third-party site that is not licensed or endorsed by Square Enix officially, then this is going to apply to you. If you ever clicked on a random link in a Twitch chat, in a YouTube comment section, on Twitter, wherever, don't do that, because it's likely going to lead to things that we're going to talk about in today's video. 1. The negative impact of RMT and how it promotes fraudulent activity. The act of selling and buying in-game data, such as items and characters, with real-life currency or assisting in such activity is referred to as real money trading or RMT. RMT upsets the balance of the game and is therefore prohibited under the user agreement. We are aware of groups that engage in RMT, which we refer to as RMT vendors, whose only goal is to make real-life profit. These vendors do not care about adhering to the user agreement, you got that right, and will often obstruct the gameplay of normal players to benefit themselves. Furthermore, RMT vendors very commonly engage in real-life criminal activity, such as unauthorized access of accounts and the use of stolen credit card information. Yeah, almost anyone you know who, you may be keeping secrets for, they've been doing. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff they've been dealing with, or that you've been dealing with. Just don't do it. The majority of items and gills sold through RMT are produced as a result of such fraudulent activity. Purchasing from RMT vendors promotes these fraudulent activities and is prohibited under the user agreement. Furthermore, as a reminder, doing so also leads to promoting activities deemed illegal in real life. We strongly encourage players to refrain from engaging with these groups, as there would be no reason for RMT vendors to exist if players do not use their services. Yeah, I mean, that's the bottom line. People go, who would be dumb enough to do that? Enough people, because they keep doing it. We keep getting the shouts. We keep getting the tells every time we go to Limsa Lominsa. So, yeah, people absolutely engage in these services. So they're trying to strengthen a means of dealing with RMT. What that means in the long run is something we'll just have to keep an eye on. We'll probably have to do an update on this topic later on when we see more tangible results, such as taking a look at those illicit activity updates that they tend to do. So they do have reporting RMT activity. Should you witness any RMT activity, we ask that you contact us using the in-game reporting menu, which can be found under System Menu, Support Desk, Contact Us, Report Cheating. Point number 1, it needs to be easier to report RMT stuff. I'm sure they're afraid of abusing something like a right-click report. It needs to be easier to report RMT activity, especially because sometimes their names are so wild that typing them out, remembering them, it's too much extra hassle. So my number 1 thing, while yes, that is how you should do it if you wish to report someone, that is just too much. Just got to simplify the process a little bit. Additionally, RMT advertisements in chat can be reported by selecting the character's name in the chat log, opening the subcommand menu, and choosing the report to report RMT activity. So this is the important bit. What I just suggested is an actual player and having a report function on their character. Here, if you open up your chat log, you can do it more quickly. This is particularly effective when you're getting advertising messages in Limsa and is the primary reason why that function is there. However, it's a little more annoying to do it when you're out in the field. Yes, you can actually use combat logs. If you see like a gathering bot or something, you can usually find some sort of log in your menus that will tell you that that character did that, and then you can do the same thing. But it's just less common sense. So I'd still like to see right-click report right on the character if you see something going down that shouldn't be going down. These reports will be processed automatically, and the reported characters will be restricted from sending further messages once they are determined to be advertising RMT activity. That last step definitely takes too long at the moment, and they already said they're going to be working on that. So this post on its own looks pretty good. You know, they're going to be updating the enforcement. They're going to be improving this. Great. I think most people will be skeptical of the effectiveness until they see it in action. But it's only a smaller part of a bigger picture, because within less than 12 hours, actually, of making this post, at 1 a.m., about 7 hours later, we got this message: changes to the Final Fantasy XIV online store gifting feature. The process for gifting optional items on the Final Fantasy XIV online store has been updated as of Tuesday, October 25th. This change was implemented as a countermeasure against fraudulent purchases made using the previous version of the gifting feature, as we confirmed instances of gift codes being purchased for the purpose of resale, as well as real-life criminal activity where purchases were potentially made using stolen credit card information. So yes, most items on the store, you can no longer use the gifting feature to produce a code and give the code to somebody. You can still gift, but there are some stipulations at this point. With the new gifting feature, certain items may be purchased as a gift for friends on your friends list and automatically delivered to them via the Moogle delivery service on your behalf. So that is how you can give your friends something now. They need to be on your friends list, and if I'm not mistaken, I'll go through the rest of the thing, because I think there's a time limit. I think it's like at least 3 days they need to be on your friends list or something like that. But let's just keep going through it before we come back to it. We anticipate that even with this update, third parties will continue their attempts to sell fraudulently obtained items at lower prices by temporarily registering the buyer on the friends list. However, the new gift service tracks the individual who purchased an item, as well as who it was gifted to. Should we determine a purchase to be fraudulent, the gift may be deleted, even if it has already been delivered via the Moogle delivery service. As a reminder, should you accept a gift purchase via fraudulent means, the items may be deleted and your account may be subject to penalties for taking part in real money trading. Items that can only be used once per character have been excluded from the gifting feature to avoid the possibility of the recipient having already used the item before. Please refer to the Gifts for Friends guideline before purchasing items as a gift. We appreciate your understanding and cooperation as we continue to implement countermeasures against fraudulent activity. So realistically, this means that gifting is harder to do for most things. From what I remember, things like mounts, minions, a lot of the more cosmetic features, those are the ones that are largely restricted. But stuff like Fantasias, I think, still work off of the old system and don't require you to actually have a friends list or aren't restricted in any way. I could be misspeaking. It could just be that some items you literally cannot gift at all, such as the ones they mention here, items that can only be used once per character. And then there are other items that aren't on that list who are still restricted to the friends list, but aren't restricted to this capacity. There's a lot of little things, but the more important thing is people saw this and they said, oh, that sucks. Obviously, as a content creator, I saw that and I went, oh, that sucks. But I pretty quickly identified that there's probably a pretty good reason for that. And if they're trying to stop fraudulent activity, that means that they've probably had a lot of it as of late. Now, that's as deep as I thought it. But then I realized this has been something that's been ongoing for at least the last couple of months. If I refer back to the actual Lodestone posts, if we go back to, it looks like September 30th, be wary of suspicious URLs and websites. We also got an important notice about software tokens and software authentication 2 weeks later. We got precautions for guarding against unauthorized account access just a couple of weeks ago. And then you can see the various posts. Here's the illicit activity on the 6th, the 13th, the 20th. We, of course, have the strengthening enforcement against real money trading and the changes to the online store gifting. What this tells us is that around the time we got that post back in September, there was probably a surge of actual fraudulent activity within Final Fantasy XIV. So, of course, they've since gone to precautions, but I still didn't even think about it much past that. However, What I would like to do is share with you a Twitter thread. Now, I cannot verify how much of this information is accurate. I'm only going to present it to you, and it should give some enlightenment. Even if there are bits and pieces that aren't 100% accurate, it is also something that I think most of us can understand after taking a look at it. All right, so I caught wind of a Twitter post by one Lady Jill White, comms open, of course, who actually made a thread regarding this recent news. Someone who knows a thing or two about why changes like this are made, let's consider recent events and make wild speculation about things Square Enix can never talk about publicly. So again, it even says this is speculation, but I'm willing to bet that a lot of it is correct. Because like I said, I had only thought that they had probably had a surge of fraudulent activity. However, this post goes into what said fraudulent activity might actually mean to a company like Square Enix. Well, yes, they of course don't want people using third-party services, breaking the user agreement, engaging in RMT activities. All of that is true, but there is something else at play here, and I think this individual is probably onto something. So, huge data breach elsewhere causes drastic increase in hijacked accounts. That means that there's a drastic increase in chargebacks because when people find out they've been fraudulently charged, they charge back. Now, if you've ever had an accidental chargeback or something with your bank with Square Enix, you know they take that seriously. I know people who have gotten 30-day bans for like forgetting to change out the debit card because it expired. Just as soon as the payment doesn't go through, it's like Square Enix instantly snaps back on it. And it seems really strict, but I'm willing to bet that this post is very, very close to the same reason why they are so strict about that. So this is largely talking about payment processors. There are shady sites who show where one can purchase discounted Mog Station items. You shouldn't use these for many reasons, but there are two main ones. First is the item is getting revoked. Duh, you're going to lose the item. Second, they use compromised accounts to purchase the item codes. And the second is the big one. Because the people who have the compromised accounts certainly aren't using their money to buy the codes they pass along, otherwise they'd be losing money. Instead, they use a saved payment option on the account. So, bad actors purchase gift codes with stolen credit cards, they pass the codes along for a tiny bit of profit, and inevitably, the cardholder notices, and they initiate a rightful chargeback. Oh boy, you think Square Enix doesn't like chargebacks? I'm sure some of us have dealt with chargebacks that have not gone in our favor entirely. Or at the very least, have caused more headaches than maybe they were worth. And we've all had to deal with something at some point in our lives that deals with this. But as they state, payment processors do not like chargebacks, especially fraud. They're inevitable, so they can tolerate some of them. But if Square Enix had a huge surge in compromised accounts and a huge surge in chargebacks, then the payment processor is not going to like that. You're going to get a letter from their legal department because it's a breach of the contract and they will cease to do business with you. There are basically 3 payment processors in the world. So this is about the only bit that I had heard elsewhere, like that through the years I've managed to catch wind of payment processors and how few there are. I don't know if it's only 3, but I'm just going to take their word for it on this one. Anyone else is basically working as a middleman on their behalf. Square Enix is a large enough company to be working with one of them, but we'll never know which one that is. If you get blacklisted by any of them, you get blacklisted by all of them. This doesn't hold true for smaller payment processors working through them because you're not considered enough of a problem. But if one of the big 3 don't want you, none of them do. Guess what happens if you can't work with a payment processor? You literally cannot even spend your goddamn money, much less get paid at all. So if your payment processor says do this, you do it. You may be familiar with this sort of nonsense from when OnlyFans was going to cease paying the people who made their name for them, or when Pornhub did the Great Purge. I wonder if this is going to get demonetized even for just saying the actual words out loud. I think she's just saving characters. I just know what she's talking about. And still can't work with any payment processor despite gutting their site. Looking at what's affected, the speculation is that the most attractive items to steal were removed from gifting. Issue resolved so far as chargebacks go. No one is buying a discounted code for a $3 clothing item. They would for that $4 amount though, but they can't. Basic summary of the speculation: people stole shit so hard that people who do the money handling at Square Enix, that those people who do the money handling said you need to fix this or you won't get money ever again. I mean, I bet this is probably pretty close to true. Normally, if it was just some out of the blue post, I might not assume that. But again, we took a look at the records over on the Lodestone of what their pattern of behavior has been since that breach a couple months ago. And remember, that wasn't a breach of Square Enix. That was a breach of just online databases and people using like similar passwords and otherwise clicking on suspicious links. A number of things that people engaged with within a short period of time that just led to this surge in fraudulent activity. And if it was enough to spark them to do all of this other stuff, it was probably a pretty serious deal. Now, does that mean it will be that way forever? You know what? Probably. I expect that basically as a content creator, doing mount code giveaways and stuff like that just won't happen in the future. The only way I could see it happening with content creators going forward, at least on the bigger items, is if Square Enix were to provide them directly, because then they'd have a record of, you know, how they were obtained and who they were given to. And, you know, it's just all those things are possible. I don't know. I don't know exactly how they are going to go about doing this, but I think this post that this person put together was very, very impressive. And even if some of it is inaccurate, because again, I don't know, I'm not speaking from a point of expertise, I'm simply sharing, as they've quoted, wild speculation. It just seems to line up super well. It's one of those explanations that kind of ticks every box from a business perspective and from a consumer perspective. And again, going back to this, if it wasn't all the way screwed up when I have to move everything over, all of this stuff just seems to scream similar things. They've just been more on top of things when it comes to stuff like this in general as of late, even within the game itself, trying to tackle issues by directly communicating with the consumer base. But yeah, this is all way too suspicious to think that it's just, oh, hey, we should probably do, like, just like a casual, like, oh, you know, I guess we should do something about that. No, they probably want to, you know, take it a little more seriously. But yeah, just keep that in mind if you're someone who uses the Mog Station or gifts things with the Mog Station quite frequently. And if you're someone who was engaging in those activities, look what you've done. That's all there is to that. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments section of the video below. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share. And stay tuned for all the latest Final Fantasy XIV news guides. You know the drill. Anyway, thanks for watching. And until next time, take care.